Dan Mullen's been a head coach in the SEC since 2009. And last year, 2020, he finally won his first division title with the Florida Gators, going 8-2 in a 10-game regular season, 8-3 after a loss in the SEC championship game, finishing up at 8-4 after a loss in Florida's bowl game. Can Florida, Dan Mullen, and the Gators get back to Atlanta in 2021 for another chance at the SEC title? I'm going to let you know in this video when I give you a preview and a game-by-game prediction for the 2021 Florida Gators football team. Let's go. Hey, good morning. It's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on YouTube today. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it also, and in addition to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true, and believe it or not, some of them are even watchable. I don't know about this one. You can let me know in the comments down below at the end whether you think this one was watchable or not. Be sure to let me know too if you think I got this right or wrong, and which games you think I got wrong. If you disagree with my final record for Florida, don't just tell me you disagree. Tell me which games it is you think that I got wrong. Let's go. All right, it's time to predict the Florida Gators 2021 season. And as usual, this comes as a suggestion over on my Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video that'll take you to the Patreon page if you've never been over there. But there's a post about the prediction videos over there, and people are commenting the teams that they want to see me do a preview and prediction on. That's where all of these videos are coming from. Click the link, check it out. All right, you already know I got my copious notes. I do all the research, so you don't have to. That's right, copious notes here. Dan Mullen heading into his fourth year as head coach of the Florida Gators. Of course, he was at Mississippi State from 2009 to 2017. 2020, like I mentioned, they went 8-2 in the regular season, 8-3 after losing to Bama in the SEC title game, and 8-4 after a New Year's Six bowl loss to Oklahoma. Regular season losses, Texas A&M and LSU. Texas A&M was a pretty good team. No shame in losing that game on the road at College Station. The loss at home to LSU was the head scratcher. Florida had that game won, had several chances to wrap it up, kept shooting themselves in the foot. Capped off, of course, famously by the Florida shoe throw. Florida stopped LSU on, it was either third or fourth down. The game would have basically been over, but the Florida defensive back, after making the tackle, picked the opposing player's shoe up off the ground and chunked it about 40 yards downfield, drawing a flag from the referee for unsportsmanlike conduct, giving LSU an automatic first down, and they, of course, went on to win the game. Devastating loss, really, for Florida, at least from a humiliation standpoint. It didn't matter in terms of winning the East. They had already punched their ticket to Atlanta for the SEC title game, and they did give it Alabama a pretty good game in Atlanta. I mean, you got to give Florida credit. They were at full strength in that game, of course, and they gave Alabama all they wanted. It was a close back-and-forth game. Bama, of course, coming out on top in the end. And then in the bowl game against Oklahoma, half of Florida's team just quit. And so you can't really look at that Florida-Oklahoma game and go, wow, Oklahoma really was 30 points better than Florida, or whatever the final score ended up being. If Florida would have been at full strength in that game, it would have been a much better game, obviously. It doesn't mean they necessarily would have won the game. We'll never know. But clearly it would have been a much more competitive game. Where that bowl game is important and does matter is that bowl game was kind of a sneak peek of what Florida's going to have to work with this coming season. Now, clearly, they've got some new additions through the transfer portal and last year's incoming freshman class. But generally speaking, in the second half of that game when Kyle Trask quit, yes, Kyle Trask quit at halftime of that bowl game. Give him some credit. At least he played the first half. The majority of Florida's offense quit before the game ever even started. But what you saw in the second half of that game is a lot of what you will see from Florida in terms of personnel in 2021. Now, the play style and the schemes may be a little bit different with Emory Jones. He's more of a runaround guy, and we'll get to that when we take a look at their offense. But Florida's got some serious issues under Dan Mullen, in my opinion, and it's really got nothing to do with play on the field. They've had three pretty good seasons in a row. They finished in the top 10 in 2018, the top 10 in 2019, finished just outside the top 10 in 2020 after ending the season on that three-game losing streak, LSU, Bama, and Oklahoma. But if you look back at last year, it was a strange year, of course, all the way around, but nowhere was it stranger probably than with Florida. You look at some of the things that went on down there last year. Head coach, Dan Mullen is a clown dressed up as a head coach. I mean, I think we all pretty much know that and understand that at this point. You go back to the Texas A&M game, Florida's first loss of the season on the road in College Station, and after the game was over in the post-game press conference, Dan Mullen basically blamed the loss on the Texas A&M crowd. He accused Texas A&M of letting in too many fans. If you remember, there was limitations and restrictions on attendance last year within the SEC. Dan Mullen accused Texas A&M of letting in 35,000 fans instead of 25,000 and basically blamed the loss on that, and then went on a rant about how the Florida administration had better sell every seat the following week, and the swamp needs to be sold out. If Texas A&M is going to let 35,000 in, then we need to have 90,000 or whatever the swamp holds. Really made a fool of himself, especially when 2 days later it was revealed that several members of the Florida Gators team and several members of the coaching staff had contracted COVID. It was just, he was frustrated, he was aggravated, and it was something that he clearly shouldn't have said, but that was a theme for Dan Mullen last year. He helped incite the brawl at the halftime of the Florida-Missouri game. You can blame whoever you want. You can point at players or whoever else and say that started it. Dan Mullen did absolutely nothing to calm that situation down, and if anything, he made it worse. And that's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of every single sports writer you read that wrote about that incident. The Florida administration agreed that Dan Mullen did not handle that the right way. It just wasn't the right thing to do. He criticized the NCAA late in the season for forcing teams to cancel practice on Election Day so that all student athletes could have time to vote. And then, of course, at the end of the year, he was hit with a show cause resulting from recruiting violations, putting Florida on probation for the first time in over a decade. Even though Florida has been pretty good on the field under Dan Mullen, a lot of stuff went on last year that made people look at Dan Mullen in a different light, particularly those in charge at Florida. I know they gave him an extension this offseason, but I've been of the opinion, and I haven't changed my mind, and I might as well just go ahead and say it now and make all the Florida fans mad now. I would not be surprised at all if this is Dan Mullen's last year in Gainesville. He doesn't recruit well. He doesn't enjoy recruiting. He doesn't like the name, image, and likeness and the sort of paying of players that has started and is only going to get worse. He has said that on more than one occasion. One of his best buddies, Urban Meyer, has a job in the NFL right down the street, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just wouldn't be surprised at all if after this coming season here, Dan Mullen hangs it up, not just at Florida, but with the college game altogether and takes a shot at the NFL. Would not surprise me at all. Also wouldn't surprise me if you have some more meltdowns and antics out of Dan Mullen like we saw last year, if the Florida administration just cuts ties and goes a different direction. I know it's not a popular opinion among Florida fans, but it's my honest opinion. You can type 1980. You can tell me I'm a Georgia fan and I just hate Florida. Say whatever you want. That's just how I feel about the situation with Dan Mullen. Let's take a look at Florida's offense going into 2021. What'd they lose? What's coming back? Well, let's look at the recruiting. I mentioned Dan Mullen's recruiting. I do this on all my prediction videos. I like to look at the last 4 years of recruiting numbers. Gives you a pretty good idea of the talent that's available on a team. I know you have transfers that come in. I know you have transfers that go out. You have injuries. You have other things like that. But if you look over the last 4 years of recruiting for any given team, generally speaking, it will give you a decent idea of the amount of talent available on the team. So we'll start with the most recent recruiting class that wrapped up this past February, the 21 class. Now, keep in mind, 2020 was the first time Florida has won the SEC East under Dan Mullen. You could say it was the best year they've had under Dan Mullen. They had a better record the year before, but I don't think anyone thinks they were better in 2019 as a team than they were in 2020. One of the best offenses we've ever seen at Florida. Should have been an opportunity to cash in on the recruiting trail, particularly offensively, and they really weren't able to do it. They finished with the 12th ranked class in the nation, although not a terrible class. Not really where it should be when you think about one of the flagship schools inside the state of Florida, a hotbed of recruiting, coming off a year in which you won the SEC East and nearly won the SEC, still only able to finish 12th nationally in recruiting, and that was good only for 5th within the SEC. And this is going to be a theme as we go through these 4 classes. 5th in the SEC. You go back to 2020, Dan Mullen had a pretty good class, 9th nationally, but that was actually 6th in the SEC. 2019, again, 9th nationally in recruiting, 5th in the SEC. 2018, 14th nationally, 4th in the SEC. So the best recruiting class they've had nationally, 2 top 10 classes, both number 9. The best class they've had within the SEC, 2018, they were 4th. So you have to ask yourself this. You tell me. Start rattling off the list of teams from best to worst in the SEC. Overall, I'm talking about the shape that a program is in right now. Alabama, Georgia, probably Texas A&M, LSU maybe, Florida. Florida's probably 4th or 5th in the pecking order overall right now within the SEC. Doesn't mean they can't win the East on occasion. Doesn't mean they can't even win the SEC on occasion. But these recruiting classes correlate directly, in my opinion, to the product you see on the field. Alabama, of course, cream of the crop in recruiting in the SEC. Favorite to win the SEC every single year. Georgia close second in recruiting in the SEC. Picked second and picked to win the East almost every single year. You get what I'm saying here. Recruiting classes at Florida should be a little bit higher than this, especially last year's class, considering they came off that great year in 2020 where they won the East, nearly won the SEC, and had one of the best offenses really that we've ever seen. But let's get back to the offense here. You got Emory Jones going to replace Kyle Trask at quarterback. Listen, again, it's no secret, and you know, I really don't care if it makes you mad. I say this all the time. Just because something makes you mad doesn't mean it's not true, okay? I don't like Emory Jones. Well, it's not that I don't like him. I don't even know him. I don't think Emory Jones is a very good quarterback. I don't. I didn't think he was a very good quarterback coming out of high school. He hasn't done anything at Florida to make me change my mind. And no matter how high you are on Emory Jones, he ain't no Kyle Trask. There's just no way Emory Jones is going to put up Kyle Trask numbers, at least through the air. Now, Emory Jones does have an advantage over Kyle Trask when it comes to his legs. He's much more athletic, much more mobile, can run around a lot more. And Dan Mullen, I think anyway, is going to change the offense some this year to fit what Emory Jones does well versus what Kyle Trask did well. You're going to see a lot less drop back passes, I think, at Florida this year, and a lot more RPOs and design quarterback runs. You have to do that with Emory Jones. Emory Jones is not going to throw for 330 yards a game or whatever Kyle Trask was doing. It's not going to happen. Even if Florida had all those weapons they had last year that Kyle Trask had, Emory Jones does not have the throwing ability to spread the ball around to those guys like Kyle Trask did. He can run, though, and that does give Dan Mullen another option when it comes to the offense. And like I said, I think you'll see that through a lot more RPOs and design quarterback runs. Running backs, Florida gets 2 or 3 of their running backs back from last year. Of course, they got Dameon Pierce, Naquan Wright, and Malik Davis. They also had that 5-star transfer from Clemson, DeMarcus Bowman. How good is he? We don't really know. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen him play, and the last time we did see him play was in high school. Florida's running backs, in my opinion, are not elite. That gives DeMarcus Bowman, I think, a pretty good shot at some playing time. It could end up that he's the best running back on that team. We'll see. I think Dameon Pierce is okay. I think Malik Davis is okay. And I think Naquan Wright is okay. I don't know if I would classify any of them as great. And I know Florida was basically a throwing team last year. And so you say, well, of course they didn't have good numbers. They threw the ball all the time. Well, one of the reasons they became a throwing team is because they can't run the ball. Florida has not been very good or efficient running the ball really the entire time that Dan Mullen has been there. Over the last 2 seasons, Florida has only averaged 130 yards per game rushing. Even in an era of slinging the ball around and throwing it, those are pretty low numbers. Now, I do think Florida will improve those rushing numbers this year. I don't know how much of that will be because the running backs play that much better, but I do think that Emory Jones is going to put up some yards rushing, some yards that Kyle Trask just wasn't able to put up. You're not going to put Kyle Trask in the game and run a bunch of RPOs or design quarterback runs. That's not his strong suit. His strong suit is dropping back and throwing the ball, and he did it very well. It's the opposite with Emory Jones. So I do think Florida's running numbers will improve this year, at least in terms of rush yards per game. But clearly the passing numbers are going to decline no matter who you have at the quarterback position because they lost 3 absolutely unbelievable playmakers on offense. Let's take a look at the wide receiver situation at Florida. Of course, they lost everything tight end Kyle Pitts. You lose Kadarius Toney, and you lose Trayvon Grimes. Those were your 3 best playmakers last year. Those 3 guys combined for 31 touchdowns last year. 31. There is no 3 players on Florida's team this year that are going to combine for 31 touchdowns. It's just not going to happen. I do like some of the things you have coming back. I like Copeland. I like Henderson. Justin Shorter, he can be a matchup problem. He's 6'5". He can run. He can jump out of the building. It's not that Florida doesn't have any talent or doesn't have any options available at the wide receiver position. That's not what I'm saying. Of course they do. They do not have a Kyle Pitts. I don't think they have a Kadarius Toney type player on the team this year either, who was sort of an undersized guy that could still get down the field like a wide receiver. And again, no matter how good these new guys are that you have coming in to replace some of the guys that lost last year, there are not 3 guys on this offense that are going to score 31 touchdowns. Florida's offensive production, in my opinion, can't go anywhere but down in 2021. The points per game they scored last year was ridiculous. They averaged, 43 points per game last year? Unreal. Not going to happen this year. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have to find a way to hold opponents to less points if Florida wants to have the 9, 10, 11, 12 win season that they're looking for. You're not scoring 42 points a game. You cannot lose a record-setting offense. Think about some of the great offenses Florida has had over the years, going back to the Urban Meyer days. Prior to that, going back to the Steve Spurrier days. None of those offenses did what we saw Florida's offense do last year with Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, and Trayvon Grimes. None of them. That was the best offense statistically that we've seen from the Florida Gators, and you're not repeating that in 2021. And I will remind you, just because something makes you mad doesn't mean it's not true. You're not scoring 43 points a game in 2021. It's not happening. So you better be relying on that defense, and we'll talk about that in a second. Offensive line, you returned 3 starters. The offensive line was okay last year, and I actually think the offensive line will be better in 2021 than it was in 2020, although I'm not sure how much it will matter because Emory Jones is pretty athletic, and even if a defensive guy manages to get through that line, Emory Jones can do a pretty good job of extending plays, scrambling, rolling out of the pocket, firing the ball downfield, or taking off and running. But I do think the offensive line overall will be a little bit better than what Florida's was in 2020. Let's look at the defense. Now, you can't talk about Florida's defense without starting with Todd Grantham. Almost every single Florida fan I know wanted Todd Grantham fired at the end of last year. Almost every single, over 90% of the Florida fans I've talked to, going back to last year and all this offseason, over 90% wanted Todd Grantham fired at the end of last year. He was not. To make matters worse, he was the 6th highest paid assistant in all of college football last year. So they're paying this guy a ton of money. It's something like $2 million a year, and the results did not justify the paycheck. As a Georgia fan, I'm very familiar with Todd Grantham. He was our DC some years ago. Georgia fans didn't like him either. There's the famous 3rd and Grantham saying. The guy's never seen an offensive formation that he doesn't like to blitz against. He can be a little bit predictable. Is he a terrible defensive coordinator? No, but his flaws can be exploited, and unfortunately for Florida, a lot of teams within the SEC know how to exploit the flaws in a Todd Grantham defense. Dan Mullen decided to keep him, did get rid of a couple of defensive position coaches, but kept Todd Grantham. A risky move. The fans didn't like it, and we'll see how it works out on the field. I mentioned Florida's offense scoring 42 points a game last year, and how I don't think they're going to score that this year. The defense gave up 32 points per game last year. The worst Florida defense since World War II, at least in terms of points per game. You got to go all the way back to the 1940s to find a Florida defense that gave up 32 points per game. But Todd Grantham, Dan Mullen, and that Florida defense somehow managed to find a way to do it last year. I do think Florida will have a strong front 7 this year. They've got some absolute beasts along the defensive line and at the linebacker position. They got Brenton Cox, who transferred from Georgia a couple of years ago. Several of the guys in the front 7 are just absolutely unbelievable. Linebackers, is it Ventrez Milner? I might be getting that name wrong. I like him as a linebacker. You've got some stars in the front 7. Now, we'll see how they perform under the Todd Grantham defense, but I think the majority of Florida's talent, and this is weird to say, isn't it? Florida's front 7 might be better than their secondary. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Florida's DBU, we're cornerback U. We put all these DBs and safeties and corners in the NFL. Yeah, you've put a lot of corners and safeties in the NFL over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. That is true. I'm not going to argue that point. You know what else your defense did last year? Gave up 28 passing touchdowns. 28. That's 4 more than any other team in the SEC. You gave up more passing touchdowns than Vandy, more passing touchdowns than Ole Miss, than Arkansas, than Mississippi State, more than Tennessee, more than South Carolina. Nobody gave up 28 pass touchdowns in the SEC last year except the Florida Gators. 4 more than any other team in the SEC. That's got to get a whole lot better in 2021 because, as mentioned, the offense is not scoring 42 points a game. If Florida's defense gives up 32 points per game this year, they'll be a 6-win team. They'll be a 6-win team. You better not give up 32 points a game this year. I do like cornerback Kyer Elam. Is that who it is? All-American candidate. He's your typical Florida corner. Outside of him, not a lot of stars or proven talent on that side of the ball. I do like the 5-star corner you got. Anybody in America would have taken that kid. Jason Marshall, was that his name? He may end up having to play a lot and potentially even start this year at Florida. That's how bad the secondary situation has gotten there. How much of that is Todd Grantham's fault? How much of it is missing on some recruiting? How much of it is talent? I guess some of that remains to be seen, but the Florida secondary was absolutely horrible last year. Got to get a lot better. All right, it's time to put the schedule up on the screen for 2021. So I'm going to let you know who they're going to beat and who they're going to lose to. Let's go. All right, per usual, Florida does not play a non-con Power 5 road game outside of the state of Florida again in 2021. You've got to go all the way back to 1991. 1991 to find a Florida team that played a Power 5 non-con road game outside the state of Florida. Pitiful. That game was against Syracuse and they got beat. Maybe that's why Florida hasn't scheduled one since then. I don't know. I know they play at Florida State every other year. This year they play at South Florida. They've even played in a couple of neutral site games. Those aren't road games. The Florida Gators have not played a Power 5 non-con road game outside their own state since 1991. Absolutely pitiful and sad. Same this year. You start things off at home against FAU. That'll be a win. You're not Miami. You don't lose to teams like FAU and FIU. You will absolutely roll FAU. Emory Jones will look like a Heisman candidate in this game. That's going to be smoke and mirrors. But he'll look good in this game. That'll give him some confidence heading into the season. Week 2, you do have a road game, but guess what? It's inside the state of Florida at South Florida. You will win. South Florida is absolutely horrible. Last year's South Florida team is probably the worst South Florida team we've seen in 10 or 15 years. They were absolutely horrendous. Again, you will steamroll them. You're 2-0. You probably will have scored 100 points total by this point in the season and given up only 20 or 30. You're well on your way to your first ever perfect season, right? Yeah, that's right. I might have forgot to mention that, but Florida Gators been playing football for 125 years. They have a grand total of 0 perfect seasons, not a single one. Will this be the year? Week 3, you host Alabama. Giant L, I'm sorry. Oh, well, here we go. Another year, another non-perfect season for Florida. Sorry, Alabama's going to beat you. Could this be a close game? Maybe. Would I bet on it being a close game? Probably not. It was a close game last year with that unbelievable offense you have, but like I said, that ain't the case this year. I don't think Florida's offense is going to be anywhere near as good as it was last year. I think Alabama beats Florida in the swamp. Florida's 2-1. Then you got the Tennessee game. Now, this game is interesting. I'm not a big fan of Josh Heupel. However, I still think Harrison Bailey has potential to be a good quarterback at Tennessee. The problem is, after Harrison Bailey, where's the talent on that team, Tennessee? Trust me, nothing would make me happier than for Florida to lose to Tennessee. I can't predict it right now. I think Florida gets the win at home against Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee had 25, 26 players into the transfer portal. Their 2 best players on offense transferred. Their best player on defense transferred. Not a good situation going on in Knoxville. Yes, it would be hilarious if Tennessee won this game, but I can't predict it right now. Florida's sitting at 3-1. Week 5 on the road at Kentucky. Now, if you talk to the Kentucky fan, they think this is the best team they've ever had. I did Kentucky. This video that I'm doing right now for Florida, I've done a Kentucky one. I did it, I don't know, a week or so ago. You can click back a few videos and find it. Read the comments in that video. I don't know if I've ever seen a fan base as delusional as the Kentucky fan base is heading into the 2021 season. Their offense has been absolutely non-existent for the last 2 years. All of a sudden now they think they're going 10-2 and winning the East. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Now, Kentucky has given Florida a good game 4 or 5 times over the last 6 or 7 years and even managed to beat them once. They should have beat them at least 2 more times. They had them beat. Let them come back. This one is on the road at Kentucky. There's always some potential for an upset. I mean, that's why we watch college football. So do I think it's a guarantee that Florida goes into Kentucky and rolls them? No, almost nothing is a guarantee. However, I cannot predict that as a loss. I think Florida gets the win on the road at Kentucky. They're sitting at 4-1. Then you play Vandy. That's a win. I think Vandy's going to be not only the worst team in the SEC, but one of the worst teams in the entire Power 5. They may be looking at a 1 or 2 win season. You should beat Vandy. Hopefully Dan Mullen doesn't incite a brawl in this game. We'll see. Week 7 on the road at LSU. I've been saying the same things about LSU. Yes, the distractions that are going on there concern me. It's hard to keep kids focused as it is, and when you've got the NCAA nosing around for going on a year now, head coach Ed Orgeron has been implicated in a rape investigation. Not accused of committing rape, but accused of basically covering one up. We'll see what comes of that. I don't know, but there's a lot of distractions going on. Here's the problem. LSU, way too much talent to be a 500 team. I know they went 5-5 last year. That's an anomaly. Do I think LSU is going to win the West? challenge Alabama, make the playoffs, anything like that. No. But I still think they're a pretty good team with a whole lot of talent. Hard to imagine LSU not winning 9 games this year minimum. I haven't done an LSU version of this video yet, but I will soon. The issue is Florida, for whatever reason, has had a hard time beating LSU over the last 10 years. I think LSU is 8-2. Is that right? Something like 8-2. LSU is against Florida over the last 10 years. Of course, these two teams play every single year. They're the cross-division rival in the SEC, Florida being in the East, LSU being in the West. This is a road game at LSU. I've got you losing this one on the road at LSU. Now, this is one Florida could win. This wasn't an easy decision to make. I think these are two pretty evenly matched teams heading into this year. I gave LSU the benefit of the doubt for 2 reasons. One, it's at home. It's at LSU. It's at the Swamp. It's a night game. It's hard to play there. Number 2, you just haven't been able to beat them lately. Last year, you had an amazing team, and LSU was terrible, and they still strolled into the Swamp and beat you. It's just, it's been kind of weird to watch how that series has gone over the last 10 years. I've got you catching your second loss of the season in Week 7 on the road at LSU. Then you get a bye week before the annual cocktail party against UGA. Florida did win this game last year. Dan Mullen improved his record to Georgia to 1-3. He lost to Georgia in his last year at Mississippi State, lost to Georgia his first 2 years at Florida, finally managed to beat Kirby Smart for the first time last year. It's not going to happen in 2021. For all that Florida is losing offensively, Georgia gets it all back. They get the quarterback back. They get 3 of their NFL running backs back. They get 5 of their 6 best wide receivers back. They've got probably the 2 best tight ends in the SEC in Darnell Washington and Eric Gilbert. They're absolutely loaded on the defensive side of the ball. The secondary was a huge concern in the offseason, but they brought in a couple of transfers to help that out with the guy from Clemson and the guy from West Virginia. I just can't see Florida beating what I think will be a top 5 Georgia team. At this point in the season, at most, Georgia will have 1 loss, depending on what happens in the Georgia-Clemson game. I can't see Florida beating UGA 2 years in a row. I just think Georgia's the better team this year. Could it be a close game? Of course it could. This is a rivalry game. And listen, Florida could win. I mean, just because I'm a Georgia fan, I'm not going to sit here and say there's no way Florida can win. I've seen a lot of Georgia teams go down to Jacksonville, have a better team than Florida, and find a way to lose the game. I've seen it a lot. So, of course, Florida could win. This isn't a trash talk video. I just think Georgia this year is a better team than Florida. I think that will show in Week 9, and I think Georgia gets the win. That's your 3rd loss. On the road at South Carolina, I'm giving you a win here. I don't know what to expect from South Carolina other than the fact that I don't think they have all that much talent. In fact, I know they don't. And they've got a head coach who's never been a head coach before in Shane Beamer. I know he's got the pedigree. His dad coached forever at Virginia Tech, and Shane Beamer's got some experience at South Carolina. He was an assistant there under Steve Spurrier back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. I just think even if Shane Beamer ends up being an amazing coach, that's not going to show this year. It's going to take a couple of really good recruiting classes for South Carolina to get things turned back around. You do have to play there. Columbia can be a tough place to play. I just think South Carolina's not going to have much to play for by this point in the season, and I think Florida goes up there and gets the win. Then you have your final non-conference game. Well, no, it's not your final, but other than Florida State. At home against Samford, S-A-M-F-O-R-D. You'll win this one huge. You'll probably get to see 2 or 3 quarterbacks play in the second half of this game. It'll be one of those type of 40 or 50-point games. On the road at Missouri. Again, if you've been paying attention to this channel this offseason, there's been a couple of themes. One, I think Georgia, clearly the best team in the East heading into the season. Number 2, I think Mizzou might be the second best team. I know I'm in the minority on this. Every single year, there's a couple of teams that I'm higher on than most other people, and a couple of teams that I'm lower on than most other people. This year, one of those teams is Missouri. I think Missouri has a chance to be sneaky good this year, and they've given Florida a good game the majority of years they've been in the SEC. Missouri's been in the SEC for 11 years. This is the 12th year. Florida and Missouri play every single year, and Florida is 6-5 against Missouri. So it's been an even series. Georgia, on the other hand, is 10-1 against Missouri during that same time period. So for whatever reason, Georgia has had Missouri's number, and Missouri has been able to keep it close with Florida most years, even winning almost half the time. You got to play them on the road there at Mizzou. I do think Mizzou is going to finish second in the East this year. So for that reason, I'm giving Missouri this win over Florida. Again, this is by no means a guaranteed loss for Florida. Florida could 100% win this game. If Florida's a little bit better than I think they will be, and Missouri's a little bit worse than I think they will be. Florida will win this game. You could be 9-3. You could say the same thing for the LSU game too. Could be 10-2. I don't think there's anything Florida can do to beat Alabama this year, and I don't think there's anything Florida can do to beat Georgia. I think those are pretty close to guaranteed losses. The LSU and the Missouri game, I do have Florida losing those, but I'll admit that those could go either way. So I've got Florida's regular season schedule at 8-4. Well, Florida State win. I'm sorry, how could I forget Florida State? Oh, well, probably because they're absolutely terrible. But yes, you will beat your little brother Florida State once again. The all-girls clown college, nowhere near being relevant in college football. They need a couple of good recruiting classes to even get their head above water. Right now, they're about the 7th, 8th, 9th best team in the ACC, which means there's no way they're competing with Florida. I don't care what happens. I don't care how good of a season Florida State has. They're not beating Florida. Florida will win the regular season finale against in-state rival Florida State, and Florida finishes the regular season 8-4. Now, best case scenario for Florida, I think they could go 10-2. And depending on what happens with Georgia, if Georgia stumbles and loses a few SEC games, maybe Florida wins the SEC East, although I don't see that happening. Worst case scenario, 8-4 probably is the worst case scenario. I can't see Florida losing any of these games that I have them winning. Maybe if I'm wrong about Kentucky and the Kentucky man is right, maybe you lose that game and go 7-5, but it would be awfully hard for me to predict a 7-5 season for Florida. Now, there has been a lot of people this offseason that have had some really low expectations for Florida, and I hear from them all the time. I've heard everything from 4 wins, 5 wins, 6 wins. I get it. There has been a couple of seasons in the last 10 years where Florida has absolutely tanked for what appeared to be no reason at all. Their last 2 coaches, McElwain and Muschamp, each had a season where they only won 4 games. I get it. So it's not like, oh my God, but how can you pick Florida to win 4 games? Florida would never be that bad. Well, they've been that bad twice in the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, Florida's got more 4-win seasons in the last 12 years than they do SEC titles. It's been a long time since Florida found a way to win the SEC. You got to go all the way back to 2008, 12 seasons ago. So I understand that. I just don't see Florida falling off the face of the earth this year like we've seen them do a couple of years in the past. I know they're replacing a ton on offense, and as much hell as I give Dan Mullen, and listen, every time I'm hard on Dan Mullen, he deserves it, okay? I don't talk about Dan Mullen just because this guy just don't like, all this guy does is talk about Florida. Well, this guy's a Georgia fan. It's 1980. He just hates Florida. You can think that if you want to, okay? There's been plenty of times where I've come on here and pumped Florida up and talked about how great they were. Plenty of times. And Dan Mullen is not a terrible coach. He's a great offensive mind. I'm not convinced how good of a head coach he is. And I'm not sold on his recruiting at all. I mean, just listen to what he tells you. He doesn't like recruiting. He has literally said it out loud. He doesn't like recruiting. He doesn't like the direction that college football is heading with the name, image, and likeness and paying players. These are things that Dan Mullen has said. These aren't Uncle Lou opinions. So those are the things I look at when I talk about this possibly being Dan Mullen's last year in Gainesville. But none of these predictions are based on the fact that I'm a Georgia fan and I just don't like Florida. I mean, that's just not true. That's just not the case. These are my honest opinions about Florida. I don't think they're winning 4 or 5 games. I think they're going to go 8-4. If things go well, they could go 10-2. And maybe worst case scenario I see for Florida is 7-5. And I really don't think that's going to happen. I think 8-4 is the most likely record for Florida in 2021. Anyway, there it is. That's my Florida 2021 team preview and game-by-game prediction. Be sure and let me know in the comments down below what you think I got wrong. Don't just tell me the record is wrong. Don't just say 8-4. That's ridiculous. They're going 10-2. Tell me which 2 games it is they're going to lose then. If that's what, be specific about it. Let me know. I may argue with you in the comments section. I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. There's no way you're right. Any prediction could be right. We don't know. That's why they play the games, and that's why we all watch them. But mark me down for 8-4. Florida finishing 3rd in the East in the SEC behind Georgia and Mizzou. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the thumbs up. Make sure you share these videos around. I'm trying to get to 40,000 subscribers by the time the season starts. I think we can do it. Help me out. Share the video somewhere. Anyway, till next time, have a good morning.